Well, hello everybody. It's Friday. Good weather here in Hamilton. Lots to go through this morning. There's going to be a day 17, story 17 today. Really great one. I'm not going to tip that off, but we're going to get into that later today. I had another, actually, late night, actually, to tell you the truth. I sat in on a Twitter Spaces, which brought me to this video, and then I get an email as well too that I have to go through too. And of course it's all the players, folks, all the players, and there's a lot of radical claims here. I mean, from the alt-right and absolutely the alt-left. Today I tag Richard Albert, John Carpe, both constitutional experts, absolutely. Richard Albert, Director of Law, University of Texas, 30 million people, not a slouch, not a small minor position, very prestigious. He's of Haitian descent. Last night I seen a Twitter Spaces, 1,000 people. I get on there. I get tossed, of course. I always get tossed. People don't like what they call my word salads or my knowledge. They don't like it because it's foreign. Truth is foreign. That's largely everywhere, folks, especially in that alt-left. Now, these are black African Americans who want to be not only reparations, they want repatriation in some extent. There's lots of different versions here, folks. Big numbers thrown out that are going to be of large concern for absolutely American Indians and officially all the Canadian First Peoples, because there are historic agreements in place with the countries of USA and Canada. I also tagged John Carpe and the Freedom Convoy, a disturbing email I got this morning from John, and some big claims that I can guarantee you. We're going to go through it today, just like the African American community in that alt-left narrative of what they're proposing in the absence of truth and fact, or just facts, real world history they're missing. So Freedom Convoy, John Carpe, claiming genocide of the first people, mass graves, not true, not accurate. I'm going to go through those numbers as they are in absolute comparative analysis of the clear Arctic Council member countries, Canada, USA, Russia. I'm going to break down all the numbers for all of you today in relation to everything, and we're going to go over slavery. So I don't miss any alt-right, any alt-left. I'm going to take care of all of you in this video, and I tag some tremendous minds. Now, for everybody, Richard Albert hasn't made any comments or anything. He sits in this stuff too. He watches, and kind of comical, but not kind of funny, is I'm starting to learn too much time with Richard and folks like Richard. It's always been somewhat of a curse for me. The more time, the more reading, the more Zooms I do with world academia. Now, these are large-minded folks. They have a great grasp of the English language. It's always been a struggle for me, not a strong suit. But I can take large volumes. I can take on understanding of those works. But when you do that, it does have an after effect. And the after effect is I talk at a much higher level than people can absorb. That's the truth. That's the truth. And we have to slow it down today, and I want to go through a whole bunch of things because I can see it gets lost on not only new followers, which I'm slowly gaining again, and I will, but I have to make sure I articulate absolute fact as I go. So we're going to take that today's notch down a level. I call this deep state truth exposed. If you want to know what's real, what's happening absolute, minus all the BS, this is the video for you. It is going to overlap some of that right narrative, but it's also going to overlap the left narrative. But it's going to release the alt-right crazy and the alt-left crazy. Now, to begin with, we're going to go through First Peoples, which are the American Indian of North America. One peoples. That's the truth. Their maps, their historic maps, much, much different than what United States as a UN state and Canada are. Of course, that's why there is a treaty between the two countries to give extraordinary powers to those First Peoples, because we took their land. There's some clear facts here right now, and largely now this portion is for John Carpe and his email. On behalf of Freedom Convoy protesters, there was a lot of good truth there, John, until you got into the mass graves. And I'm going to give you all the numbers and the work I'm doing that I've far exceeded anybody else in Canadian history, especially in international law, real international law, not Canada's corrupt colonial legal system that reflects exactly what South Africa tried to pull, leading all the way up to 1985 and then subsequently 1993. And you know what? I don't care what lawyer says what, until you produce enough doctorates who are published to produce any kind of fact that supports your narrative, I'm not going to accept it, because I got all the players and all the strongest minds with actual publication released worldwide for anybody. We can go through UK, we can go through Oxford entirely. I can go through every major university in the United States, all of them, from Harvard all the way down, and blow people out of the water. And it's real fact, credited, verifiable, studies done, and monies are spent on that. So, and the history's there. So it doesn't matter what people say, it's what is and what was logged of the time. So, folks, and John, this is for you. When we look at genocide, whether Canada or any people like it or not, there's a world system in place. There was a world system in place before World War II under the League of Nations, which Canada was a member. That system gave human rights laws bound absolute, and studies done that Canada agreed to do, and they did do. Okay? After World War II, a new system came. Canada agreed to it. Canada did studies every year all the way through. When we look at tuberculosis, John, and you start talking about mass graves, people, this is absolute fact. Not just Canada's historical annual report facts under different stages, League of Nations, transfer, World War II, that all our ancestors fought and died for our freedoms. Those are logged under the UN. There's a transition period there. There's even a release from the United Kingdom. If anyone wants to talk about 1931, I'm sorry, but you're wrong, dead wrong, John. Sorry. Anybody, and I ask you, bring forward your experts. I have all mine, and I have all my publications. I'll myth bust you all day long. Here's the truth about 1931, guys and gals, that nobody can take away. I don't care what degree you have or what claims you have. 1931, and after that, all the way up till 1952, all lieutenant governors of every province, territory, were all UK Crown sworn citizens, meaning not Canadian citizens. These are actual sirs, royal titles, real royal titles from the UK who served in those Crown positions. And the idea that they're largely symbolic is absolutely cockamamie and false. Governor General, up to 1952, all UK citizens, absolutely. What are these crown colonial positions that you're told are largely ceremonial? Well, they pass all your bills and acts. If they don't stamp a parliamentary bill voted in majority by MPs, you don't go. They also officially name every privy council that's lifetime sworn to them. That's Governor General. Lieutenant governors in provinces, same thing. Governor General is the Majesty's power, chosen by the Prime Minister on the advice of the Prime Minister, of absolutely all your highest courts. That's Supreme Court of Canada. And then the sworn Governor Generals to the Governor General has control of all your superior courts. Supreme Court for Governor General, superior courts for lieutenant governors. All they have to do is call any of those justices, say, hey, no good, I don't want you to rule that way. Or you can rule, but remedy is going to be limited to this. That's a fact. You will find this rewritten by Chief Justice Wagner. Chief Justice Wagner, the highest justice in Canada, wears the royal robes, crown sworn position. He was Governor General in term, and he rewrote the entire legal speak of Governor General. To his credit, he did a lot. Not all of it, folks. Not all of it. When I talk about crown customary law, as laid out in our preamble, the first paragraph of the Constitution, where you give away your sovereignty to the UK, it clearly tells you the majesty of UK, and that is yours. And when you look at Governor General as Chief Justice Wagner rewrote the whole thing, there's the power of the justice system, override. Absolutely, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Absolutely all of your police, folks. RCMP are the Royal Canadian. They are military police who have municipal, provincial, federal, and military overlap. All four, just like Nazis SS, just like what was in South Africa before 1985, before they got voided. Okay? That's the truth. That is Canada. That is the system. Now, John says it's fake, the genocide. Now, let's go by all the numbers. League of Nations to World War II, subsequent UN state called Canada, and what Canada vested and signed on. We're also going to look at, yes, mass graves claimed by tuberculosis, as reported by every nation of the world, even in the League of Nations, even in the UN state called Canada after that, after World War II, 1945, after Canada signed the Charter. What do the reports show us? Folks, do you know the term per person capita? I'm going to explain it to you if you don't. To get an accurate statistic in comparative analysis, meaning taking two countries and looking at them. We're looking at the Arctic Council, where all First Peoples are represented in which continents, which countries. And folks, when you do that, you have Russia, USA, Canada, reports from all histories overlapping, memberships or not, but those reporting programs. Okay? We have a huge problem. It means a measurement of all countries you're comparing, which when we look at the Arctic Council, it's a limited group. USA, Russia, Canada, there's other little countries, but we're talking about First Peoples, the people who were there first. Don't worry, we're going to get into the African American side, the alt-left narrative coming forward that's cockamamie too. Cockamamie right across the United States. But John's rationale, John's statistics have some serious problems. Before, in the League of Nations, which means before World War World War II, it's pre-World War I through World War I, and then on to Nazi Germany and then the complete war. The League of Nations, per 100,000 citizens, meaning we go to Alaska per 100,000 citizens. We go to the former Soviet Union per 100,000 citizens. Even what I call white, blue, red Russia that we see today, this is before communism. It's the first stage of Vladimir Putin today. The white, blue, red that fought the Soviet Union all through that. We have numbers of all the first peoples of Russia. That northern Siberia, Arctic tundra, extremely hard living. Doesn't match North America. I mean, it does. Much northern for us. We're getting to the upper echelon of our northern territories, now 3, but at one time it was just 2. And the Northwest Territory encompassed several western provinces. We look at that, in that northern circle, Russia takes a vast majority, as does Alaska, and as does Yukon, and what was the Northwest Territory, which is now also in Nunavut. We look at those portions in that diagram, in that harsh living. We start analyzing numbers through all those years, USA, Russia, Canada. In those years, before 1949, after World War II, and through League of Nations, year after year report, we got a problem, folks. With no cure for tuberculosis. John, I know you love statistics and you're great at this. When we talk about for 100,000 in all 3 of those countries for First Peoples, your top out numbers of death toll are 700 for every 100,000. 100,000. Do you know in those years of 100,000 residential school Indian children in just Canada, it's 8,000 fell to tuberculosis when there was no cure versus 700 for the rest of Canada's First Peoples outside of residential school. This is before the cure in 1949. 700. Russia don't even come close, folks. Don't even come close. Alaska, not even close. And you can watch historical movies, Balto and smallpox, the race of the dogs to get the medicine to save the children in Nome, Alaska. The race. In Canada, do you think there was ever a story of a race to save the Canadian Indian? Ever? Russia, do you think that the story of St. Nicholas and the sleds and the reindeer and all of it, and same with Alaska, which the Inuit people, oh boy, I'm not going to say it right, Inupiat. I think I got it. Inupiat. I'm practicing. Do you think those stories exist in Canada other than Santa Claus, a fictional Santa Claus, magical who can fly a sled? No. There's no running across at any mode means necessary to save anybody. In fact, it's the opposite. You would have to be some kind of complete illiterate, some kind of alt-right nutcase to deny that is a genocide, a clear genocide. Cure or no cure, all the children taken by armed force, put in residential school before 1949, before a cure, were likely 8% were going to die. Can you imagine folks at home today, all Canadians, all First Peoples, if you were reading a pamphlet, do I live in northern Siberia? Do I live in Alaska? Do I live in any of the western provinces up through the territories? As a first person, you're looking at a brochure and they say, well, it's less than 0.2% chance you're going to die if you put your Indian child in a school in what was the former Soviet Union. There's less than 0.2% chance your kid's going to die. Again, everybody, these are numbers before 1949. Now, USA, Alaska, you look at their report, and it's 0.08% chance that your children's going to die in one of their residential boarding schools. Okay? Then you hit Canada, they say there's an 8% chance that if you're an Indian family living in Canada, your kids will have an 8% chance of dying in a boarding school. Now, folks, please, for the life of me, at those radical numbers, this is League of Nations that we can't do nothing about, and there was no cure for TB. Doesn't matter how many church folks, unless through ground penetrating radar and then exemption done by the ICC, International Criminal Court, as sponsored by the P5, UNSC P5, in a majority resolution in the United Nations Security Council, which means all members, but not getting vetoed from France, UK, Russia, USA, or China. You can't have a veto from any of them. Folks, Russia, USA, pretty touchy on the subject. The First Peoples and Canada are all lying together. I'm just giving you the stats and history, okay? I can't make this stuff up if my life depended on it. I couldn't. And you know what? It just might anyway. That is pre-1949. So when convoy people are starting to talk a lot like lunatic Nazis did in Germany, the Holocaust of the Jews never happened. Oh, it happened. There's been Holocausts all over the place. The worst kind of Holocaust you can ever do is against children in this world today, post-1945. So let's get into the numbers post-1949. And John, I know you love numbers, so please go verify this stuff if you're going to use it and talk about it, or tell the religious community, don't worry, it's all a lie, because I went through all of your medical data before vaccines released. Well done. And people, this isn't white power for me. It's excellent. That's my way of doing excellence. That's how I was raised. So anybody pulling that, excellent. That's how I look at it. I don't care what anyone else says. I also know 3%. I also know that. But, folks, after 1949, it's 4,000 for every 100,000 residential school children. Now we get an extremely large problem here, because that's 700 and 100,000 and going down, USA, Russia all the time. Hey, cures here, 1952. There's awesome, pure sanitarium cures. You're going to get through it. Now, all of a sudden, even though it's half as much as the 8,000 of League of Nations, and then transitioning out of the crown by 1952, King George VI dead, it's all Canada now, guys. No more cockamamie stories about 31 and the rest of it that wasn't true then and it's not true now. Not true now. You want to know? Again, I told you, look at the historical evidence of Governor General, Lieutenant Governor, and all those crown positions. All UK held, folks. All UK held as per the Constitution. But King George VI made a deal called the 1941 Atlantic Charter with said Soviet Union and the United States of America that, hey, don't worry, I'm going to remove that all over. And he was. He was working on it in 1952, but he died abruptly. That is a transition where Canada had full power. They were going through decolonization, and King George was en route to finish Canada. He didn't finish. Didn't finish any of the other colonials because he died after that. But Canada picked up that crown, smacked it dead stab on the head, and the politicians ran away with it. What happened with residential school genocide from that period on. 4,000 for every 100,000 children. So let's pull out the brochure. Hey, Indian folks, we're going to look at 3 comparative countries: Russia, USA, Canada. We're going to have a brochure for boarding schools. Boarding schools. If you go to Alaska, 0.02% chance your kid will die of the curable disease tuberculosis. Way better than it was before the cure was there, and even, right? Hey, right on. And it's right in line with all Alaskans. That's the other part of this, folks. Indian children are right in line with all the other Alaskans, with some differences in remote areas, right? Small differences. Guess what we find in the much more dispersed and massively more populated First Peoples of Russia, where a lot of Russians are not living, nowhere near like Alaska or Canada, way down, much more, just like USA, more than USA, but nowhere near Canada. Like we're talking, here's the bar for USA, here's the bar for Russia, quite a bit more in USA, but so dispersed, so absolutely far with no real settlement. And we're talking Siberian tundra here, folks. Okay? Not making an excuse, I'm just saying the numbers are pretty high, but compared to Alaska, I would say there's a difference in how easily you can get medicines out. But then there's Canada, and massive amounts of regular population in all those areas. And the numbers are astronomically more than they were before 1949. Even though from 8,000 in every 100,000 residential school children, it was halved to 4,000. The problem is, folks, it's the drop from Russia and USA. Now we're at 2,000% more for Canada versus the rest. 2,000% more in Russia. I haven't even done the calculation. I know it's 5 zeros, so at least 10,000% more Indian residential school children died in Canada for TB when there was a full and absolute cure to TB long after 1952, folks, even currently today. During the pandemic in Alberta, mass breakouts in northern Treaty 8 into the territories and others. But absolutely, Treaty 8 Alberta, I got the numbers. AHS. What's going on, folks? 2021. 2021 numbers, guys. I'm sorry, John, but when you do the kind of detailed analysis, the excellent analysis you did on health measures and effects and all numbers, I agree with you. I looked at all your numbers. Now I'm giving you my numbers in comparative analysis of the statistics of the former Soviet Union, which is the Russian Federation today, as well as the United States of America, absolutely Alaska, just to give a fair perspective. Moscow is the most highest populated city at such a northern elevation, besides Edmonton, Alberta, with a population of over 1 million people. Just like Moscow. And we're not able to even remotely compare to USSR or the current Russian Federation. Not even close, folks. Not even close. So I have a problem with alt-right narratives that come out to be a lie. Because I don't know what else to say. Unless there's some data report I haven't seen, but I'm pretty sure that when I have the Government of Canada in each and every province's reports all these years, and I've gone through all of them, and I'm easily able to do that for the United States of America, specifically the state of Alaska, and even for the Soviet Union in the whole of Siberia. And the numbers of those people reported year after year against the WHO, right, John? You did the same thing. Against World Bank, you did the same thing. And against the national statistics each and every year. There is no justification for any mass TB post-1949 in Canada for residential school children. The only way, by all experts of all Arctic member council compared, to justify that. USA and Russia are going to go, fuck you. Fuck you. Not right now, Dakota. I'll be up in a little bit. I'm doing a Facebook Live, okay? I'll be up in a little bit. Sorry, guys. Kids. So, that is the myth bust of the alt-right. And John, I suggest you look at the works. I suggest you go back, because you're going to lose ground, you're going to lose credibility, and it's actually going to destroy religious organizations, folks. You're only strengthening Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh. I'm not saying their false claims are problematic. I'm not saying their use of the law has been problematic. It is. It's clearly autocratic. I don't disagree with any of that. I don't. But I do disagree with presenting narratives in the absence of all the clear data. Clear data you had no problem getting when it was to do with restrictions and everything to do with supports for the convoy. And that's what a person should do. But when you take only one narrative and when you see something you don't like and you go, we're not going to look at that and we're just going to tell everybody something made up or deny it. That makes you no different than what Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh did. So you strengthen them. That alt-left says, well, John Carpey's doing it too, so there. That's exactly what's going to happen. So for all those who are for freedom, so you say, and those that attach these alt-right narratives, I suggest you look at this stuff and you don't it away, because when you do that, you're exactly like the alt-left. Now, that takes care of that, folks. Thanks for being patient. Now we're going to move on to African Americans, reparations, and repatriation. Now, it's all over the place. I shared Ice Cube, very popular video, Down Discouraged. He was talking reparations, repatriation. This fella last night, with a huge attendance crowd, was talking about reparations, not repatriation. He's thinking, oh, you want me to move. No, we're talking about, because you said you wanted the same kind of deal as the American Indian. That's absolutely for American Indians in their self-government, self-determination, as per 1975, if you've ever bothered to read it, is absolutely about restitution, repatriation, meaning land and everything else. That's absolutely what happened with them. Absolutely. A nation within a nation. So when you say we want the same deal they got, well, we got to look at that. The other claim was that African Americans have been in North America for thousands of years, even possibly before the American Indian. And I'm going to tell you, folks, that if you ever wanted to have a group of people, which is 6.7 million American Indians today, against the over 40 million African Americans of today in USA, you just scored it. That is the worst narrative you could ever push forward, is in reparations or repatriation. Either way, I want 100,000 for every family, or I also want land designated to said peoples because of slavery, which there is a good case there, folks. I agree. But do you think that Africans were in North America before the first American Indians? The answer is no. You will not find a single tribe from any community or history, including the very, very richest, oldest, the Utes, way down south, New Mexico, go through the Rockies. I know people say, it's 1,200 Indians, who gives a fuck? That's what we're doing here. African Americans, that narrative last night, are saying, those 1,200, fuck them. They don't know nothing. They never went through no slavery. No, because they're matriarchal. If you took the time in history to read, you'd know that America and Indians were at war for a record amount of decades, longer than any other war in American history. Nobody even comes close. And even more than that, for Canadians and First Peoples, that means both Canadian and American First Peoples, absolutely all African Americans and Americans today and all ethnicities. Nobody fought as long a war ever in American history than the American Indian. Not only that, technologically inferior, extremely inferior. I mean, musket came along, Hudson's Bay Company, American trading companies and all that introduced that, sure. Horse thieving according to American laws, all that. But it's a war. It's a war. Treaties broke. First Peoples have never, ever been able to be put into slavery, not successfully. That's why they're called savage, because they were matriarchal with a whole different science system, even calendar, time and dating, solar, astronomy, all from South America. If you want to know the history of these massive cultures, the 1,200 Utes, who used to total in the millions, will go through their wipeout from the Spanish colonialism. The African American tries to make some new history for Mexico. Wow, wrong. You're embracing colonialism again. You want to be repatriated, restored through people who, you're right, no fault of your own, but you're saying, listen, America, give us from the American Indian. Give us their lands too. Give us their wealth too. Look how well they're doing. Well, I guess they're doing well. They were largely wiped out. They're tens and tens of millions, even hundreds of millions in South America are long gone today. There's entire groups extinct. When I get into reparation, I say, here's a concept which so far that alt-left African American keeps going like this. Oh, I got Will Smith. When I put the notion forward that let's take all 50 states, their entire colonial histories. Let's start with the breakaway 13 colonies and the history up to the 50 states and what exactly America had to do to get rid of colonization, which is what brought slavery to America. All of them. The crown. We can't just say, oh man, I don't care about that. America's on the hook. Because I talk about jewels of the Atlantic and Pacific all around North America, all with American Indian history and wiped out. And here's the sick part. There's two kinds of wipeout. Obviously, the European disease is a big one. But then there's the breed out. Like Mexico, Spain. matriarchal doesn't work, they don't want to be willing slaves, we're going to have to breed it out of them. Well, how do you breed it out of them? Well, you go with a military operation, you wipe out all the men. And then you take all the women and you force breeding on them through rape. That's how you kill the matriarchal Indian. Been done all over the world, so it's not like we can't trace that history. But there's more sinister thing that I think African Americans at this time now are going to have to address. This is for that lunatic left. Exactly who was doing the breeding? Because I know this is in the church that don't want to release any records, but I know there came a point in France, is early North American colonial history, prior to the 1800s. And folks, remember, in the colonial world, there is no crime of rape, very limited, and it's in the first class only. And it better be claimed by your father or your husband. Because a woman does it. That was the only quiet location of rape. First class. Everybody else, there's no such thing as rape. This is proven in American history upon independence and the wars that America entered in after independence as they continued to fight colonials, even fight the colony of Canada under the British Empire. You will see America talking about rape. Canada, not one publication, because there was no rape. No rape. Who brought out the Indians in a lot of these colonial jewels around and in North America? Sorry, alt-left. You're in a lot of trouble. And so is the African American. Whether your fault or not, for those trying to deny genetics and DNA testing and checking your history and European ancestry and African ancestry, well, folks, you're going to find the North American can be chased too. So can the South American as well too. And we can tell in any population what DNA belongs where and absolutely where it came from. For those African Americans with these clearly wrong agendas, we see it in American Christian communities, Old Testament style self-proclaimed Christians, as well as the African American Islamic institutions in the United States of America. We see some problematic, very, very problematic, not represented in history, just like what we just went through with John Carpe's Freedom Convoy lovers from the alt-right. You've got some propagandas there. Just like now the alt-left, that Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, who gravitate to that Democrat side, we got a problematic narrative coming from the alt-left. Not just the Christian, and that it's also all those radical Democrats, Black Lives Matter, who are a large membership. When it comes to DNA testing, there are many ethnicities represented. Now I'm going to talk about African descendancy found in the Americas and recorded by the said First Peoples. You can go way down South America and you will find Africans way down at the tip of South America. And yes, America's been discovered many, many times, the Americas, by different ventures over the years, but you will find the African chased to the Aborigine people of Australia. They were boating thousands of years ago and they made it to South America, of course. Where else are they going to go? That makes sense. The DNA's there. And yes, Africans have been in South America and even recorded by absolutely the First Peoples. Absolutely. North America? Sorry, I don't think so. And the Utes will tell you all the history. The absolute oldest of the oldest civilized civilizations from South America up into North America. Massive, massive civilizations with huge astronomy and scientific masterpieces. Huge. The academic world, historians, and all the best doctorates of so many fields, all over the world, who go all over the world, are funded to do this stuff, are going to tell you, careful which doors you open in Pandora box, because you're going with a false narrative. The experts are going to tell you it's been published for a long time if you choose to do the work. But often populists from the alt-left and the alt-right will always put this on, charge forward, half-truth that fits their narrative, and if it doesn't, block it, delete it, and I'll tell you that last night presentation, many of the presenters messaged me after. I even have glorious, large following African Americans who decided to give me a following and follow back. It's pretty interesting, right? I am going to the United States. I'm going to do a tour of all 50 of the states. I have monumental works to do here in Canada. Folks, we got lots of time before we need federal party status. So there is, in a nutshell, your alt-left, your alt-right, and the fabrications, the problematic situations. I've tagged Richard Albert, John Carpe. I hope you folks sit down and have a look at that. And I do want to say Richard Albert has nothing to do with any of these narratives. He was just observing, as he does. A lot of experts do. I see them all the time. They pop up. The ones I follow and follow me all over the world. Sometimes I can get involved. Sometimes I can't. I'm linguistically challenged. I'm not very good at that. So when it's not in English or there's no subtitles, I'm not going to participate. But that brings us to Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine and Russia. The conflict today in real history. This is absolutely red flag yellow, the sickle and hammer, versus white, blue, red, Russia flag today. And those histories, folks. Who did the Jewish genocide? Who supported the Nazis? All those under the red flag, yellow, hammer and sickle, which is Zelensky's Ukraine today, from Kiev west. Historical history. Now, Kiev East is white, blue, red Russia we see today since 1991. The Allies transferred the Soviet power that they cemented with Joseph Stalin, who would go on to do a genocide, a guy from Georgia, a guy from monarchical times, a country based in monarchy before that. And then we see Western Ukraine, Russia of the Vladimir Putin flag, and federalism and republicanism. They lost to the Soviets, backed up by the Allies. You'll find UK and all the democratic states backing them up. And they still couldn't defeat Joseph Stalin and his Soviets and Ukraine West, where Zelensky's at. Who would engage with Nazi Germany and who would absolutely support Nazi Germany? You'll see that for those in Poland under that wanton flag too, where Poland was forced into that. Poland's got its independence now. People fought back. Massive genocide. Massive Eastern Ukraine genocide. And you will see in the history of Armenia and Azerbaijan, you'll see that 1.5 million genocide that I showed you all. Now it's flip reverse in much lower numbers, but it's the same enemy. You're saying no to the white, blue, and red because you're mad it's a monetary government. You don't want them to get too powerful, but they're full federalist. They have constitutionalism, absolutely. Versus all those aligned with the red and yellow in absolute centralization, no federalism whatsoever. You will find Donbass was the Don Republic for 2 years with the white, blue, and red. They lost to the communists. That side of Russia, Vladimir Putin's Federation of Russia, lost to the communists, as did the Entente, which is the Allies, lost supporting pre-Putin's white, blue, red. So now the Democrats under Joe Biden say, no, everybody hate Vladimir Putin. He's the most atrocious, murderous, rampaging nutcase ever seen in the history of World War I and II, except for Hitler. The red, yellow sickle hammer communism of the Soviet Union, which would reign supreme till 1991, committed massive atrocities just like Nazi Germany did to the same peoples and others who didn't represent their centralized system. And now all of a sudden that's all forgiven, that's okay, it's no big deal, let's just write a new narrative. I've watched people show me videos of educators in the United States, but when you look at what the person's published, they're doing a video, but they leave all these tidbits out for all of you. Don't look at America first, voted in 100%. Don't look at federalism. Don't look at the white, blue, red history. Don't look at those independent republics of 1921 through to 22. Don't look at it. Pretend it's gone. Let's just pretend for a minute that centralization, absolute Unitarianism, communism is an embraceable thing and we love it in America. Can we pretend that? We can do that. Just put these blinders on so you can't see the truth clearly right in front of you. You can look it up yourself. I couldn't make this up if my life depended on it. I'm the only one talking about the truth. And truth is presenting all the facts. Not the facts that are, yeah, these are facts, but we erased this history, and we're going to erase this one up here too. And you're only going to get the middle section, and we're going to pretend that somebody's hosting that flag and that narrative, and that isn't true. There's a reason why, in mass majority, all the Russians love Vladimir Putin. Already all the 84 voted to get rid of communism. And they got that. Russia is a lot like France today. There isn't only a one-party federal system, but a different regional system with a different set of regional powers. Not unlike exactly like the United States of America. It was a two-party system. So, you guys, let's look at it. Communism, full Unitarianism. One size fits all, doesn't matter the makeup of religion, demographics, culture, ethnicities. We're going to have one centralized unitary system by a specific favored religion, ethnicity, culture, socioeconomic, civilization, over a blanket over everybody. Who cares about your diversity? And this is good in the UN. I have the results of the vote officially to kick Russia out of the UNS, or the United Nations Human Rights Council, which USA is already long gone. So they have no P5 status. They're not one of the 6 organs, principal organs of the UN. They're not binding. If anyone's ever told you the Human Rights Council is binding, is wrong. There are human rights laws. There's an ICJ, an ICC, who are all bound to the 5 allies of World War II, subject to their veto, their sanctions. They're the absolute courts that give all 5 the discretion to be judge, jury, executioner. All 5 together, or each and every one on their own. If you don't believe me, Donald Trump just ordered the execution of Soleimani. I want him dead, and they blew up his car in front of the whole world and said, fuck around and we'll have you executed. If you don't believe me, they've all done it. And again, I'm going to say it, nobody's done it more than France. France has executed more than 22 African presidents, world leaders. And I go, yeah, we did it. Mess with the bull and you get the horns. That's the UNSCP-5. What you're being told about Ukraine was not true. You messed with the bull, you got the horns. You had an easy way out. All white, blue, and red said is, give white, blue, and red Don Bass, Don Tisk, and Lance in historical narrative, give them regionalism. Canada, you have regionalism. You're in a federalism. You have provinces with a set division of powers. Why? Really limited, and the crown is problematic. But USA is a republic. USA is a federalism, and USA gives each of the 50 states absolute powers over key things. That's all they asked for. And it's what Ukraine agreed to, and it's what the United Nations Security Council, 2 weeks before the invasion, voted unanimously, meaning all of them, that Ukraine was to do that. Simple solution, folks. If the people love you, if they love your unitary system, the red flag with the yellow hammer and sickle, they'll follow that. If they don't, through regionalism, they're going to develop their own culture and subsystem in that power. The answer was no, we're not going to do it. We're going to remain red flag, hammer, and sickle. Is this what Canadians want? Because that's what Stephen Harper said was good for all Canadians, even though all Canadians, in a massive majority, well over 70%, didn't matter if you were Liberal, NDP, Conservative, said, look, I don't want red, yellow, star communism having this much impact in Canada. And Harper said, no, I won't do it. And then he turned around in Privy Council and did it. Just like the executive power of Joe Biden turned around and said, we support Ukraine. Nobody is allowed to tell you about 1921-22, even though it's published, but nobody is going to show that narrative because it goes against the crown and absolute history. You're to embrace communism, just like Harper did, just like all the NWO does. They say, no, you go with the communist narrative. You can look exactly what I just told you about Ukraine, 1921 to 22, the Russian Civil War, and Putin's Russia lost to Joseph Stalin's communist Russia, which Western Ukraine is absolutely tied to. Leading, in fact, and they turned all those states into communists, all the way up to officially 1991. 89, I guess it fell, but officially 91. And I'm going to tell you something else for referendums, folks. All of the former Soviet Union, red flag, yellow hammer and sickle, all of them voted in majority to leave communism. When we look at the War of Independence, 1921 to 22, was a war for federalist republics, independent states with a division of powers. Exactly what Russian is today, in the same flag under Vladimir Putin, giving a division of powers to all 84 regions. The promise for the last 8 years in the fight in Ukraine, unitary Ukraine, to transform it. Now, there's a bunch of narratives here too, folks, that the UN Human Rights Council throwing Russia off, and why Russia's been making all these narratives, and they're saying it's propaganda. In history, folks, at the exact same time as the Russian Revolution, there was the United States of America, America first. Same time period, guys. By 1924, it was cemented American isolationism. White, blue, red is pondering, and I have it from Putin, who already did constitutional amendments, already did massive, but he left in international law in the preamble of the Russian Constitution. He even says, and I can bring forward all the experts, but I can also bring forward Russia's releases, that Putin is debating about removing the international law, which would be exactly like America First in isolationism 1924, because everybody, Russia under the Putin regime now is a teleportation in a time that America has in their most recent history too. Again, I'm going to say America First in the 20s. After World War I, America went into a mass period of isolationism. Russia's looking at that now. Listen, we're a great federalism. We're not going to change. We need to ensure Donbass gets what they voted for, they thought they were voting for in referendum. We're going to make sure Donbass gets it. 10 million people displaced in Ukraine over the 8-year period. The Russia, white, blue, and red did the same thing to Ukraine in a matter of 40 days. So anyone telling you that somehow Russia's failing or Russia's getting their ass kicked or any of the propaganda, when you do comparative analysis, 2014, what's central unitary Ukraine, red flag, yellow sickle, regardless of that yellow, blue, that's not true. Not historically, that's just a creative design to fool people. Look at the real history. Russia's now back in time to that independence period that they had lost to the Soviet Union, which would be the Soviet Union, the centralized unitary state, that force of communism. Russia's going back, is back to that Russia, but now they're bringing it back for the rest of them. And the matter is, when you look at recent history of America, who had the same thing, this white, blue, red Russia is likely, folks, in my opinion, to go into isolationism if it continues. And you know what? America, you became more powerful post-isolationism than anyone else in the world. So if you think Russia's going to become weaker as a federalist power, they're never going to give that up. The Russian people will die before they give up what they fought so hard for in their own version of a war of independence. And they will die before they ever give that up. They will go through all kinds of atrocity, likes of which maybe even Americans, even in their war design. It's a lot like the Russian war design, because I hate to break it to you, folks. 50 states, 84 regions. They're the same thing, in the same federalism. Only difference is unitary federal party, dual federal party in USA. That's it. That's all the difference is. Nearly everything else, besides fundamental amendments and certain governance, but Russia and USA operate a very like machine. When you look at machines, we're not talking an airplane versus a moped. We're talking automotives, two cars. They're like two cars. And you look around the rest of the world, we got horse and buggy. That's not a car. Russia and USA are cars. They're like. May not be designed exactly the same. One's got a bigger motor here. One's got a better tranny. One's got these tires. This one's got those tires. Little differences, but you can say at the end of the day, that's a car. That's a car. Russia, that's a car. That's a car under Vladimir Putin. Start looking around the rest of the world, it's like, that's a kite, that's a moped, that's a horse and cart. Not cars. Very few cars in the world today. Very few cars. Canada puts up cardboard and dresses it up, but it's a horse and carriage with cardboard to look like a car. And a lot of people, they see it, it's all colored and scribbled, and from a distance, like, hey, that's a car. When you get up close, you're like, whoa, wait a minute. These are cardboard cut. What's under here? Holy smokes. It's a horse and cart. What a bunch of motherfuckers. That's my analogy. I hope you guys liked it. And like I said, you can go through the world and you'll find this is the work I've done. These are truths for all of you. In Canada, be scared of the alt-right. In Canada, be scared of the alt-left. United States of America, be scared of alt-left. Be scared of alt-right. They can turn on it. And you need just one simple federal amendment. That will change everything for America. Remove and define key powers of the executive of presidency. I don't know why the masses don't see it. I don't know how you're going to get there. So far, you have a strong federal court system, independent. People worry about, oh, there's no way Republicans on the Supreme Court. Oh, there's Democrats on it. Except for they're an independent judiciary, knife's edge. They get carved. As soon as they get into it, wherever their personal, I'm going to do all this. It's just like a president. You find out 90% of the things being surrounded by 250 people all with key positions designed constitutionally. You don't get away with nothing. You can even see Joe Biden. What looks like he's confused and people make fun of his videos. You can see it's like Secret Service stuff to him, right? Oh, someone's recording me. Then he turns around, looks at the flag. He's like, oh, what do I do? Because he knows what happens to him, right? Constantly watched, constantly surveilled, no privacy. Whereas Justin Trudeau has all the privacy in the world, has all command of everything. He has full-on supreme dictatorial autocratic power. Every prime minister does. Harper used all the same crown customary systems that Trudeau uses now. They're both evil, man. People are just waking up to it. This is my video. It was long. There was a lot of detail here, but it had to be shared. I hope I've answered a lot of questions. I hope people take the time. Share. Get it out there. This was worth it, and I hope it explains to a lot of people. And if folks, friends, followers, and then those loyal to me, when you see comments, take this and say, hey, man, why don't you sit down and watch this video? And here's all the work you can do yourself. Find out it's true. I'm not about attacking people. I'm all about the truth. And, you should be scared with these alt-right, alt-left narratives. You should be scared because they turn on full hate. And once combined, you end up in Nazi Germany situations. History will show you all the time. It's a staple of colonialism. Nazi Germany was just a highlight of it. There are many, many others alive and well today. I know 3 full-on, powerful designs just like Nazi Germany. Canada won, the first one, older than their system. Thanks, everybody. Bye now. Share. Get it out there. Truth empowers. This is real deep state knowledge for everybody. Bye now.